So glad that people are joining us tonight for a really exciting guest that we have with Matt, and that is Katie Halper. And I'm very excited to have Katie here. She has, like Matt, been somebody who has been silenced for saying and doing the right thing. And so without taking too much more time, I'm going to introduce Katie, although like Matt, she's somebody who does not need introduction. I'm sure you're all familiar with her. But Katie Halper is the host of the Katie Halper Show, a live stream, YouTube show, podcast, and WBAI radio show. She's the co-host of the YouTube show and podcast Useful Idiots, which she co-founded with Matt Taibbi at Rolling Stone and now hosts with Matt Hoh. Past guests of these shows include Bernie Sanders, Noam Chomsky, Abby Martin, Miko Peled, Nora Erekat, Daniel Ellsberg, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and more. Her writing has appeared in The Nation, The Guardian, New York Magazine, and more. And so I can't hear you, but I know that everyone out there is giving it up for Katie Halper. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And of course, Matt Hoh. Matt Hoh is the 2022 North Carolina Green Party candidate for U.S. Senate. In 2009, Matt resigned in protest from his post in Afghanistan with the State Department over the American escalation of the war. In 2010, Matt was named the Ridenhour Prize recipient for truth-telling. Matt's writings have appeared in online and print periodicals such as the Huffington Post, USA Today, the Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Post. He's been a guest on hundreds of news programs, on radio and television networks, including CBS, CNN, Fox, MSNBC, NPR, the BBC, and PBS. And so let's all give it up for Matt Hoh and Katie Halper. So let me just go over the format very briefly, and then I will get out of the way for a while. Matt and Katie are just going to have a discussion. I think that one of the common bonds here is that these are two people who are being silenced by the mainstream for saying things that need to be said at a time like this. And they'll be talking for approximately a half hour, and then we're going to take some questions. So get your questions ready. I will leave my email address. I know that we can't always answer every question, but please email me and we can keep the conversation going. And so without further ado, Matt, take it away.
I can't hear Matt. Can you guys hear him?
I can't hear you, Matt.
That's
you're silenced once again by the media.
I am, you know,
No.
And it actually, yeah, I mean, they do. They get inside my own head, you know. That's the control that we're up against. You know, if it's you know, you mute yourself.
Yeah, you're self-censoring.
Right, you do that all the time. So, but no, Katie, it's great for you to be here. Thank you. Thanks to everyone who's you know, joining us again. We've been doing these since March, I think, and you know, each one is great. And you know, before we get into kind of some of the stuff, Katie, that I think a lot of people want to hear about, particularly what happened with you and the Hill, and you know, how you were treated for just speaking openly and plainly. I wanted to ask you just about, because I think a lot of people probably have questions about your evolution, like how you got to this point. Like you started off as a comedian and then you went into political commentary. And was it always political for you? Is that correct?
Yeah, I was always into politics. I actually thought when I was younger that I'd go to law school and do something like civil rights law or immigration law. And then I fell into kind of artistic things, documentary film, comedy, writing. And then I started a show. I was actually at the morning show on WBAI, at WBAI's morning show. I'm not really a morning person, so I pitched them my own show, which is the Katie Halper Show, and I started doing that on WBAI, and I turned that into a podcast, and then I kind of reversed it and turned the podcast into a radio show. So I pre-tape it, then they play on the radio, and then during COVID, I started doing a live stream. So now my show is basically a live stream on YouTube at youtube.com/The Katie Halper Show, which I then turn into a podcast. I also turn it into shorter clips. So everyone please subscribe, youtube.com/The Katie Halper Show, so you don't miss a stream. I also, before the pandemic started, Matt Taibbi asked me to co-host a podcast with him, a podcast and YouTube show called Useful Idiots, which we started at Rolling Stone. Then we went independent. Matt's now on book leave, and so I'm hosting with Aaron Mate at the moment. But yeah, I've always been very into politics. I went to this secular Jewish socialist summer camp called Kinderland. I actually made a documentary about it that's coming out soon. It's called Commie Camp. And so that part wasn't really an evolution for me. But yeah, when I was in college, I didn't think I never thought I would do what I do now, which I guess is a kind of blend of, I mean, I used to do stand-up. Now I don't do stand-up. I try to be funny. I try to make politics funny because they're so depressing. But I guess what I do now is a blend of podcasting and video hosting and journalism and, advocacy journalism.
Yeah, I went to a Jewish summer camp as well, actually, a place called Rosemarin's. Me and my goy friends used to try and sneak in and steal ice cream and those little orange drinks that would come in the cardboard containers. And then the counselors would chase us back through the woods. And that was my Jewish summer camp experience. Yeah.
Wow. You were treated like, it sounds like they launched a pogrom against you.
Well, to be fair, we were a bunch of rotten kids who were trying to steal ice cream from, the paying clientele of the summer camp. Right. So yeah, but I think
is the name of the summer camp, by the way, which I highly recommend.
And where was it?
It used to be in upstate New York, and now it's in the Berkshires. So by the time I was there, but my mom went there, my grandmother went there, my worked there, they worked there, and I worked there. Paul Robeson used to visit. Pete Seeger visited. Wow. Yeah, our bunks are named after, like, there's Harriet Tubman, Goodman, Schwerner, and Cheney, Pablo Neruda. We, instead of having the color wars, we have the World Peace Olympics. We have to share our care packages collectively within the bunk. It's great.
We kind of snicker at that, right? And we kind of laugh at it. But I'm someone who, I went to a good public high school. I went to a good private college, and I never read Chomsky or Zinn, until I was in my late 30s, probably. Right. The ideas of reading anything by I read Martin Luther King, but reading Angela Davis or Malcolm X, that was not in my curriculum. I mean, so I think what you were given was actually a pretty real gift, even if at like this point we kind of snicker at it, right, and say, commie camp and everything. Yeah,
but I mean, we use that word like it's funny, but it's also true.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. If I make fun of it, it's lovingly. I actually think it's a great place. So everyone should send their kids there, or encourage their friends to send their kids there.
When you're talking too about you're starting off at WBAI, and getting up in the morning, obviously having to go in the studio, and then you have this like revolution in technology, which I think is something that we haven't even really understood yet. Like, this is what gives me hope about our political movements, is we got stuff like this now, things that 5 years ago, really weren't even with us. We had it, but we couldn't really have done this well 5 years ago, let alone 10 years ago. But yeah, I mean, like, you're thinking of that and like this idea that you don't have to wake up early, drag yourself into the studio to do that work. And so you've seen this evolution, this kind of radicalization of communication. And I mean, like, that type of where that can go, do you think about that a lot? Is that something that occurs to you, like what you've just kind of been part of these last several years.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like in some ways it's really empowering and liberating and democratizing the media. But I guess, and we'll get into this more, I think, when we talk about what happened at the Hill. But, there are some people in independent media who have a huge reach. Obviously, well, Joe Rogan is not independent now, right? He's Spotify, so I guess he's corporate media. But he's someone who was independent and has a huge reach. But barring that, it's still pretty hard to get your message out to a huge audience. At the same time, you can get a message out. It may not be to as huge an audience as you'll have if you can pay for advertising. But I do think it's created a really important community.
Yeah, and one of the things, I was listening to you and Aaron Mate on Useful Idiots talk about this the other day on that episode with Douglas McGregor that you just had, which I tell you what, Katie, so I'm, in veteran circles, and that podcast has made the rounds in the sense of if you want to listen to something very good on the war in Ukraine, like no bullshit, a very calm, collected, reasonable understanding what's occurring in the war from somebody who knows what he's talking about. Listen to McGregor talk to Katie and Aaron about this. But you're talking about, so you eventually get this role with the Hill, right? So if you've been on the Hill for a few years doing the weekend, and people aren't familiar with the Hill is the newspaper out of Washington, D.C. It has a large digital presence and it has a YouTube channel.
Right.
And part of that is The Rising, right?
Were you ever on it? Have you been on it?
I have never been on the Hill.
Never been on there.
There we go. I know. See, this is what
this
is
there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's see. Yeah. So Rising is this show on the Hill. It was started actually, interestingly enough, by Crystal Ball and Buck Sexton. Buck Sexton is kind of a mainstream Republican. But then he left, like amicably, and Crystal wanted someone who was not a mainstream Republican. So she invited Sagar and Jetty on.
And I'm trying so hard not to do this, Katie, but it's the joke is there. It's probably been done before, but Buck Sexton sounds like Pornhub's version of The Rising, right?
I hope that's his name, because it's going to be really embarrassing if I just made that name dirtier than it actually is. But I'm pretty sure that is. But so Crystal and Sagar started it. It really got on the map when Crystal and Sagar started co-hosting it. And the deal with them is that she's on the left, he's on the right, and each of them will say things that are outside of, let's say, the purview or the acceptable lanes of corporate media. Mm-hmm. The Hill, Rising really prided itself on letting people talk about stuff that you couldn't talk about in other corporate media. So I was a guest. They invited me once, and then I guess we hit it off, and it was a good segment. So I turned into a weekly segment, and that was 3 years ago. Then they left, started their own show, Breaking Points, and they had a new rotating cast of hosts. But again, every day there's one on the right and one on the left. And so I took off. I mean, when there was that turnover, there were a couple of weeks that I didn't come on the show, and then they asked me back on this new iteration of the show, and I restarted. So basically, I'd been doing weekly appearances over the course of 3 years. Mm-hmm. Then they asked me to do some guest hosting, which was great, guest co-hosting. So I did that 4 times, and I was going to do it 2 more times, just actually like I was supposed to do it Monday and next Monday. But what happened was the Monday of a couple Mondays ago, it was my 4th time hosting. And when you're a host, you get to do these things called radars, which are basically monologues straight to the camera. And I decided I was going to do a radar, and I wanted to do it about Rashida Tlaib getting smeared as an anti-Semite, basically, for these comments she made at a Justice for Palestine event. She made virtual remarks and said people are realizing more and more that you can't be progressive, and except for on Palestine, you can't be progressive while supporting Israel's apartheid state. She was smeared by the likes of Jonathan Greenblatt from the Anti-Defamation League, the ADL, who lied about what she said, totally misrepresented it, said she had demanded a litmus test for American Jews. She didn't mention American Jews. He was making that up because the ADL often can't actually engage in facts, so they have to smear people. Right. In fact, that's why they're always pretending that criticizing Israel's anti-Semitism, because they don't want to engage people in the actual substance of the argument. So he did that with Tlaib. Debbie Wasserman Schultz tweeted something. Jerry Nadler tweeted something, a bunch of people, Richie Torres, of course, who does a lot of pink washing for Israel. And then Jake Tapper did a segment on it where he did that kind of, Donald Trump, Fox News-esque thing. Some people are saying, so he said, some of her Jewish colleagues find her comments anti-Semitic. Mm-hmm. So I decided that I would defend her and also say, because another thing that Greenblatt said is that Israel's not an apartheid state. And so I decided my monologue was going to be a defense of Tlaib and also laying out the case that Israel is indeed an apartheid state. So I made a video, I wrote the video, I recorded it. I cited, because apartheid is actually an international crime according to international law.
Yeah, so, and there's a legal definition for it.
Right.
Yeah.
So I made sure to quote the United Nations. I quoted the International Criminal Courts. I quoted Israeli law. I cited human rights organizations, Palestinian human rights organizations, international human rights organizations like AIPAC and Amnesty International. I cited and quoted B'Tselem, which is an Israeli human rights organization. All of these places have said it's apartheid. Then I quoted several Israeli officials, including prime ministers, who have said that Israel is an apartheid state, or they warned it would become one. In fact, Yitzhak Rabin, as early as the 70s, warned it would become one. But more recent prime ministers have also said that. Then I quoted Nelson Mandela, Desmond Tutu, and then Naledi Pandor, who is a South African politician who said recently at the United Nations General Assembly that there's more and more consensus growing around the idea that Israel is an apartheid state. And so I recorded that, and I finished hosting for the day, got a call from a producer who was like, I want you to hear it from me. And she was upset. Like, the producers were upset by this. They didn't want this to go down the way it did. She's like, I want you to hear it from me that we're the higher ups at the Hill, or she just said higher ups, saw your radar, and they're not going to run it. They don't feel comfortable running it. And I was like, why? And she said, well, I didn't know this, but there's a new policy where the Hill doesn't run op-eds on Israel, either written or video. And I was like, okay, that's weird and that's problematic. And I was pushing back, and I tried to see if they could run it anyway, and maybe they could have on an opposing voice afterwards, or I could debate someone afterwards, let someone else have the final word, whatever, because I just really wanted to get it out there. And
can I stop you for a second?
Sure,
I mean, that was what they said. They said that the Hill make sure I get this straight, because I've seen this and I was like, that can't be what they're saying. But they literally said, we're not going to run op-eds on Israel, Palestine anymore.
Yeah, they said, the producer said that I could do that. They were letting people do segments, but not op-eds. So a segment is when I, as a guest, come on. It's what I would do every week. That's a segment. So just chatting, right, with the hosts. Or a segment can be when the hosts are just chatting with each other. But they distinguish between a segment and an op-ed. Segment being a discussion, op-ed being straight to cam monologue. So I'm trying to see if they'll release it. I'm going back and forth with the producers. And then Wednesday, and they're hopeful that maybe we'll be able to do something where it's going to be on, and then they'll have someone else. I'm like, why don't you have Jonathan Greenblatt on from the ADL? Let him make his case, Not that I really was excited about that, but I was just trying to get it out there. And then I get a call from the editor-in-chief of The Hill, who called me and said, we're not going to run the radar. I'm like, okay, why not? And he said, well, we get a lot of pitches that we pass on. No, that's just not true, because as I know from people who host there, that there's no editorial process that happens. You as a host, you write your radar, your monologue, you email it to the team, and they put it in the teleprompter. That's the only interaction you have with the production team.
Right. And a number of people who've done that work, like Ryan Grimm, and have come forward and said, look, Ryan said, I've done 150 of those and never once did. Yeah. Exactly. So, So Ryan wrote about this. He himself had been a host there, and he said, he said that that had never happened to him.
So that I knew was a BS excuse.
Right.
Then he said it was because it didn't fit into their sweet spot of coverage, because it was international, not domestic. Okay, one, it's domestic because it was about Tlaib. Two, Israel is what was it? Henry Kissinger, I believe, said foreign policy is domestic policy. But I don't mean to.
There's all kinds of
Henry Kissinger to make my point. Right. There's
right.
And
all kinds of things like that.
I know as a guest and a host, I would constantly talk about international stories. In fact, the Hills producers would throw international story ideas at us.
Yeah.
So I knew that wasn't true. And then I texted the producers and I was like, so, okay, I get it. They're not going to run the radar. Can I talk about it on my segment tomorrow? Because I would tape every Thursday morning and then they would run it on Saturdays. And the producer goes, check your email. And I checked my email and I got an email that said, hi, Katie, we're not going to be needing you to do your segment tomorrow morning. Please feel free to submit any unpaid invoices. Best of luck.
God. That's like...
Yeah, I was shocked. And something I want to point out is that, and clarify, is that a lot of people are like, some people who are supportive, but some people who think they're speaking truth to power and like they're owning me or something, owning a lib or something. They're like, well, obviously Katie did this because she for attention, because obviously the Hill is a centrist corporate. But no, I had spoken about Israel several times. I did a segment as a guest about Israel shuttering all those human rights organizations, literally welding the doors closed. I did a segment about Israel bombing a cemetery where children were playing, where they were visiting their grandfather's grave. I did a segment about Israel lying about murdering Shireen Abu Akleh. There was no indication that this was something that would get me censored or fired, but it did.
And I mean, the thing about it was this government, our government, gives Israel about $6 billion a year now. And the drumbeat of dead Palestinians continues. 45 children have been killed by Israeli occupation forces. I mean, I've been there. Like, when you're in these Palestinian villages, the Israelis have been very good about, very smart, very capable, very competent in how they conduct their occupation. They have terrorized every village in Palestine, every city in Palestine, every family you talk to. They are terrified that their children are going to be abducted, because what the Israeli forces do, the Israeli border police or the Israeli army will do, is they will come in and take the children in the middle of the night. Now sometimes you get your kids back, other times you don't. I mean, this is, we could spend the whole time talking about that, but just to get to the point of just $6 billion to prop up occupation forces that do this, terrorize deliberately and strategically families into submission. And on the other side, what you did, having a monologue, wanting to open up a discussion about the fact that Israel has been identified as an apartheid state, not by Matt Hoh or Katie Halper or Rose Roby, but because you went to great lengths in your monologue to lay out all the sources, right? This person said it, this organization said it, and to give a degree of credibility to it that you have to for this particular conversation. And so the nauseating thing to me is that this won't be the desire to keep it hidden, right? And then to punish you and make you an example out of you so that others don't dare speak about this. What's been the kind of the reception from, not from, your fellow your fellow travelers on the left or in independent media, but have you gotten anything from corporate media? Have people reached out at all from, any place outside of kind of like the independent alternate left media spectrum?
Jonathan Fugelsang, who I really am grateful to, who has a show on Sirius XM, actually had me on last night. That's about the most mainstream I've gotten. Of course, none of the kind of right-wing cancel culture warriors have said anything about it. Nothing from Ben Shapiro or Jordan Peterson, both of whom are in Israel now. Nothing from Jordan Peterson or Ben Shapiro, Barry Weiss. And Barry Weiss, of course, cut her teeth trying to get her own Palestinian professor, Joseph Massad, fired from Columbia. So no, I mean, it's interesting. I actually just got today, someone joined my Patreon they saw me on Crystal, Kyle, and Friends, and he's someone I went to college with, and he was like, I don't know where I stand on Israel, but I really admire you to sticking to your your convictions. So it is interesting. And there's some people who are like, I disagree with you on this, but it's terrible what they did. So there are some people who don't share my exact analysis even of Israel-Palestine, who still think that what the Hill did was really like disturbing. But I have been getting a lot of support. And I should also point out how lucky I am, because this is not my only gig. I mean, again, I really encourage people to support youtube.com/The Katie Halper Show. Just subscribe, just like the videos. It's a free way to support it. But this is not my only gig. I have The Katie Halper Show. I have Useful Idiots. There are people who have lost their livelihoods over this.
Right.
Stephen Salaita, who was a professor, was fired. He's now driving a bus. And of course, you have a lot of academics or commentators. Mark Lamont Hill was fired by CNN. Juan Cole had a job offer, basically fall through from Yale over his criticism of Israel. Abby Martin was not allowed to speak at Georgia because she refused to sign basically a loyalty oath, saying that she wouldn't promote, engage in, say anything good about boycott, sanction, BDS. Also, of course, Palestinian journal. Oh, Cornell West. Yeah, I'm seeing in the comments.
That's right. Yeah.
And then
By
Palestinian
Harvard. Yeah.
journalists obviously lose their lives covering this. I mean, Shireen Abu Akleh is just one recent example, but there's so many more. And Israel, we saw with the March of Return, Israel was just targeting the press, targeting medics. So of course, it's very upsetting, but again, I have it a lot better than other people, and I'm really grateful for all the support I've gotten. I'm very frustrated that I've lost this more mainstream and very large audience that I had at the Hill. The good thing is, I've kind of forgot about this part. The good news is that I reached out to, when I thought that maybe they weren't going to release it, I started reaching out to Breakthrough News and my friend Rania Kalik.
Ryan is great. Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah.
And I showed her the script. I was like, I may want to shoot this with you guys. I showed her the script. She loved it. The director of Breakthrough News loved it. And as soon as the Hill told me that they were, because even if the Hill had not fired me, but if they were, if they just weren't going to run the monologue, because I mean, maybe I was willing to stay there, and not because I was happy about some kind of compromise. It would still have been very problematic if they didn't let me do op-eds, but I was willing to stay there and do segments on it, precisely because no one else talks about this stuff. So I really wanted my voice to get out there. But then once it was clear that they weren't going to do the radar, and I was like, okay, let's film this. And so they told me they weren't going to do the radar Wednesday. They fired me Wednesday evening, and Thursday morning we shot the video. So you can actually see the video at youtube.com/The Katie Halper Show or youtube.com/Breakthrough News. And big shout out to Breakthrough News and to Rania Kalik. And so that video did get out there, and it has gone over 100,000 views, which is great. But I am, I'm sad and disappointed, dismayed, frustrated about not having the reach that I used to have, because I really wanted to get that message out to a less radicalized audience. That was one of the strengths of Rising, is that it reached a very mainstream audience.
Yeah.
So, but I'm just going to have to keep talking about this on my show. I've been doing a lot of other shows. A lot of people have covered it, which is great. I wrote an op-ed at the Daily Beast, of all places.
Have journalism schools contacted you at all? I mean, that type of
not any no. I mean, no.
Because that's what as I sit here, listen to you as I watch, and I see what you do, and I see what you and your colleagues do, because some of you are doing such great work. Again, expanding the way we use technology with media, and I just think man, it'd be fantastic if Katie was talking about this to a journalism class. Right. Getting into those heads at that age, as well as telling this story, because obviously part of this is a cautionary tale that the Hill and other corporate media wants to have, right? Like, if you step out of line, if you color outside the lines, if you don't toe the line, whatever the line is, you are not going to have this paycheck. You're not going to have this access. You're not going to have this viewership. You know, one of the things that was interesting you said on your show, I think that's what I was starting to get to, and then I got scatterbrained, but was what you said to Aaron about being on the Hill and having the set, right?
Yeah.
And having, and the importance of that. And so, I mean, what are your thoughts on that in a sense of like, we do a lot of this kind of stuff and, you know, there's a lot of probably maybe too many now in terms of YouTube podcast things out there. I mean, like I'll never be able to listen to all the podcasts I've got on my podcast feed, right? I mean, there's so many great things, but I mean, this idea of reaching out and getting out to other people, you know, there's a lot of Americans have never heard the term apartheid used for anything other than South Africa. They think it's probably a South Africa specific thing. Even if you use it to describe the American South, you know, in the 50s, up through the 60s and in the 70s, you would get, you know, kind of, that's not apartheid. Apartheid was, you know, I mean, so your thoughts on that, you know, I mean, I think a lot of people here are kind of interested in like, where do you see this going? Like what comes out of this for not just for you, but for, you know, the left, for like the independent political left.
Well, what I really liked about being at both the Hill and at my shows was I liked having kind of one foot in the corporate media and one foot in the independent media. I think that, you know, another thing that I want to do another thing that I should mention is that I had pitched to the Hill basically a leftist version of The View, and we shot a pilot of it. It was with me and Brianna Joy Gray, and I were in studio in DC. I'm based in New York, but I went down to DC for that and also to do the hosting. So we shot a pilot for that, and our guests were Abby Martin and Rania Kalik, and it was a panel show. And they released a clip of it. It did really well. So again, the Hill, in case they're saying that there's, you know, they told Brianna Joy Gray, she said this publicly. I'm not speaking out of turn. That it was a stylistic reason that they didn't run my radar, which she didn't believe. And I also really want to.
What does that even mean?
No
like,
idea.
did you have your hair in a ponytail
yeah,
that day?
Right,
Like,
exactly,
yeah, I mean.
And I want to commend Brianna Joy Gray for saying on the Hill. She actually said on the Hill. She said that she condemned their decision basically. But so I'm still going to try to do that show because I know people are really hungry for that show. They would love the idea of a leftist version of The View. And I want to, you know, I think it's important to, next week I'm having on Miko Peled and Noura Erakat. Now, they're both phenomenal guests and people.
Right.
Noura Erakat is a human rights lawyer. She's a Palestinian American. She wrote a book called Justice for Some. And then Miko Peled is fascinating. He wrote a book called The General's Son, an Israeli in Palestine. And I'm sure that this really speaks to you, Matt, because of your experience as a vet. His father was a decorated general. His mother's father was one of the signatories to Israeli independence, and he also tragically lost his niece in a suicide bombing. Right. And he's a major advocate for Palestinian human rights. He's his father also changed over time, and he's a one-state solution guy.
Miko's the guy who took me to Palestine.
Oh, wow. Okay.
We were on a Veterans for Peace delegation. Wow. Actually, I'm sorry, on the other side, this here behind me next to the poster of Julian. Yeah. I cannot handle like doing
the flip thing.
It's not like a mirror, you know, right. but so, you know, that photo there is Miko's in that photo along with a number of Palestinians, some people from Code Pink, from Veterans for Peace. And we're in Hebron, walking down Shahida Street. There's a whole story with that, but you know, getting gassed and, you know, I mean, and that was, you know, again, I don't want to get into all that story, but Miko was the one who propelled us there. Miko is fascinating. And people want an introduction to Palestine, to Israel. His book, The General's Son, I can't recommend, but yeah, please. Or I can't recommend better than that. Yeah.
No, it's so good. So they're both coming on next week. I'm going to continue talking about this and talking about more things. I also want to do more of those monologues that I did. So got to keep it up.
Yeah. Sorry, my dog's standing right next to me and crying. He's alternating between crying and scratching. So his tags, and now they're pushing around the box. Yeah. So I don't know if they
He's very
are.
upset about this. They're upset about the censorship. This
They
rampant
really are.
censorship.
They really are. I think they are, very upset with corporate media. They don't like, I mean, so, but yeah, I mean, that idea though of having like a view,
Yeah.
for the left. I mean, the idea of, utilizing what's worked very well for corporate media and then packaging it so that we have success in terms of our narrative, in terms of our our messaging, in terms of our being able to tell stories that won't be able to tell. I mean, that's what I keep coming back to, as I think about what do we need to do after running this campaign now for 10 months or however long, seeing how difficult it's been to actually do a campaign as an independent campaign, as a grassroots campaign, as a third party campaign, as a green campaign, how hard it's been. I mean, we had tremendous media over the summer of our campaign when we were accused of fraud.
Right.
When we were accused of fraud, when I was all over the place. I was on all kinds of things, being interviewed by all kinds of newspapers. The AP ran 5 national stories on us. NPR ran 3 national stories on us. But as always, the questions to me were, "Hey Matt, when did you stop committing fraud?" Right? It was never about, "Hey Matt, let's talk about the situation for healthcare in this country and what we can do about it." You know what I mean? So, and then once we won, and it was clear we won, and it's clear that we had been the victims of fraudulent allegations of fraud ourselves, the media attention just completely dropped. Like I was up at the Julian Assange rally in DC this past Saturday, and very similar, right, in a sense of censorship in terms of no corporate media coverage and what it means for corporate media. I mean, what happened to you is very dangerous for journalism, for media, and for corporate media. And what's happening to Julian, of course, it could be the death sentence for journalism in this country. But the number of people who I met up there who said, "Matt, yeah, I know, I heard about what's happening. You guys were in the courts," who heard about the court fight, but who then did not hear that we have won.
Right.
Right. I mean, because that wasn't what the establishment, for lack of a better term, wanted to be talking about. They wanted to talk about this third party that was being accused of fraud, not about the fact that this third party was being oppressed, being lied about, being, burdened with frivolous lawsuits and everything else.
Right.
I mean, so yeah, it keeps coming back to that for me. Like, how do we get around that? Right. And like, that's obviously what I've been asking, most of my questions for you has been like, where do you see this going? And this idea then of having something like The View with you and Abby and Rana and Brianna, and that ability to have that type of conversation and tell people things, that would be just, it's fantastic, and if you could do that on multiple levels.
Yeah, I want to respond to that, but I also realized that I omitted something really important. So thank you to Fahim Shirazi, who wrote in the comments, "Noor and Miko are fiercely passionate. Love them. Noor's baby cousin was gunned down by the Israeli occupation forces." So that is true. And I neglected to mention that. So they both have lost people through the occupation. And it's amazing that they have kept on keeping on. So condolences to both of them.
Right. Right.
And I'm sorry, I was distracted by that omission. So you were saying that.
Oh, just if let's put it this way, if I was to, the Powerball down here is like $455 million, right? So I go out tonight, I buy a ticket, I win tomorrow or Saturday or whenever the thing is. Then I say, "Hey, Katie, what do you want to do?" What is it you would do? If
right.
Fat Cat Moneybags Matt Hoh comes rolling in and says, "Hey, Katie Halper, here's a blank check." What kind of media empire would you like to build?
Well, I would like to do that show, The View, The Lefty View. And then I would probably like to have a full-time staff, research and writing staff, so
Right.
I could do a daily show that had, or at least weekly with monologues. But I guess I can do that. I just have to get my stuff together to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is, again, it comes back for me about like, how much do we really need to do this, in a sense of to build the infrastructure for it. Do we need to recreate Air America, or do we need to recreate, what was the one that only lasted for a couple of years? I'm not sure how politically independent it was, but the Black News Channel, Right? I mean, there's been various iterations of an attempt to get some type of independent media
Right.
that I think maybe they become too top heavy.
I mean, I
And
think another problem that we have to figure out how to deal with is that there's so much division on the left. So the right is much better at both. It's funny, the right is better at two things. They're better at being bolder and farther from the center. Now that's also because they have the funding that we don't have on the left,
right.
but they also kind of get in line. And there's so much division on the left that's very unfortunate. And I don't know where the lines are. I think that there's certain things that there are certain red lines probably, but I don't know what they are. And there are definitely a lot of beefs that I think we maybe should squash so that we could have like a bigger, more unified block. But because we're very far from that. And a lot of people keep asking me about this, like, oh, you guys should all join forces together. And of course, people have different ideas of who those forces should be. For some people, X person could never be allowed in. For another person, that person could be, but Y person couldn't be.
Right.
So there's that. And I do think that we need to, I don't know, we need to get creative because we are facing very serious challenges to society.
Yeah, I mean, I always think about, so 10 years or so ago, 12 years ago, I was running called the Afghanistan Study Group, and we had, I don't know how many members in it, but it was pretty big. And Grover Norquist was one of our members. It was a big tent. Grover Norquist from Americans for Tax Reform.
Yeah.
The way we got Grover on to our program was we went to his office and we said, do you know how much money the war in Afghanistan is going to cost this year? He said, no. We said $120 billion, and he like fell out of his chair. Because even a guy like that had no idea what the war was costing at the time. And you say that to him and it gives the guy a heart attack. But, what he would do, I don't know if he still does it or not, he would have like every Wednesday morning, this like breakfast meeting. You go to this thing and there'd be like 300 people there and they would get in line. They'd all have an opportunity to talk. They'd all have an opportunity to present. They'd all have an opportunity to speak their piece. And then they would all get in line and they would literally say things like, you may not agree, but we have a larger goal here and we have to accomplish that. And so we have to, they would spell it out and people would follow that. It is. And on the left, we have a circular firing squad very often. Yeah. It's, I think, but the hope though, I think when you see something happen like what happened with you, right? And we're having it here. I don't know how much of it's my paranoia, as it said, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean people aren't out to get you, right? But you hear this from other folks who've run independent campaigns, left campaigns, green campaigns. I've had about 4 candidate forums that I was going to mysteriously canceled. Right. It it doesn't make any sense. Like there's never a reason why other than circumstance. I've had a few of them say circumstances beyond our control, which, that's, but you have this over and over again. You have being shut out from the media. You have, an unwillingness to have, we'd rather cancel the entire event than have an independent, have the Green Party guy show up or the Libertarian guys show up or whatever. And so you experience it and you say, man, we are up against this edifice, right? We are up against these entities that are interconnected, that have not just relationships, but they're interdependent. All these corporations are interdependent. There's a really good reason why the Hill doesn't, and I forget who the Hill is owned by.
Nexstar.
Yes. They're the ones who, okay, I could get a whole thing about Nexstar, but anyway.
Yeah, no, and I really recommend this article that Branko Marcetic wrote. I'll put a link in it. He wrote it for Jacobin, and that goes over Nexstar. I can actually read part of it if you want.
Sure,
like a sentence. So they bought the Hill in last August for $130 million. And then in September, Psagot Value Holdings Limited, an investment firm based in Tel Aviv, bought 6,100 shares in Nexstar to the tune of more than $1 million. And In late August, Nexstar filled the position of deputy managing editor of News Nation, its cable channel, with Jake Novak, a journalist who spent the preceding year and a half as the media director of the Israeli Consulate General in New York. Novak has written approvingly of Donald Trump's dropping of U.S. support for the two-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and has advocated for Israel to build more illegal settlements, saying, quote, "It would bring more peace, prosperity, and freedom to both Israelis and Arabs," end quote. Six days before the announcement of his hiring, Novak led a presentation at Bar-Ilan University titled "Defending Israel Against Media Bias: How to Fight News Media and Social Media Bias Against Israel. The Best Defense is a Good Offense." And it's scary because Nexstar is incredibly powerful. It's the largest local broadcast TV owner in the country.
Nexstar has, I forget the number of local media stations that they have just in North Carolina.
Really?
Yeah, they have. I think they have a presence in every television market in North Carolina. So whatever, where they've got a local station everywhere, basically.
The company now reaches nearly 40% of all U.S. television households, and it owns, operates, and provides services to 199 television stations and one AM radio station across Washington, D.C. and 39 states.
Yeah. It's, and
Low-Key, do you know Low-Key, the rapper?
Yeah, he's great.
I went on his show today, and I haven't even had time to digest them, but he did a deep dive into other people on the board of Nexstar, and they are very sketchy and even have, no surprise, connections to Jeffrey Epstein.
Well, as a friend of mine says, the only thing you need to know to really understand American politics is that both the Clintons and the Trumps were good friends with Jeffrey Epstein.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's we had down here. So, and I know people probably want an update on this because the last one we did was before the debate. So there was one debate in North Carolina, Katie, between the U.S. Senate candidates, Ted Budd, the Republican, and Sherry Beasley, the Democrat. And both myself and the Libertarian were kept out. We're never really given an option to be a part of it. And we were given instead the option to to have an interview on the hour before the debate. So in a pre-debate interview show, okay, you two losers can be in the consolation round here, basically. The thing about it, and then they do the interviews with us, and they don't even post the interviews on their website. So I'm not kidding. They had a couple of college professors on who were talking through the whole hour, throwing out their tropes and their conventional wisdom and everything else, just mediocrity in terms of analysis, and then they had these two college kids who were and they posted those videos, but they refused to post the videos from the Green or the Libertarian candidate. And then the debate itself, this is what gets really scary about this, is that we've seen the devolvement of corporate media conversation to just red versus blue. And the more emotional it is, the better it is for ratings, right? And that's what's driving the major media. But, in this case where you're supposed to have a debate between two U.S. Senate candidates, and with all going on in the world and our society, tremendously important stuff, what they do is they have the debate on a Friday night at 8:00 on a cable channel that less than a third of residents in North Carolina get. Now, it was open to everybody. If you went to the website, you could see it. Okay. But, but the estimates I heard from somebody was that, fewer than 2% of North Carolina voters watched the debate. So it's not only, there's the active suppression of information, but then there's also this kind of indirect suppression of information that goes along with the power structure, because they don't want to be asked tough questions. They don't have to explain themselves, and God forbid somebody says, hey, we give $6 billion a year to Israel. They just killed another 4 children the other day. Do you think we should do something about that? God forbid that question gets asked. So,
So I do have an audience question. Katie, I don't mean to interrupt. So if you
whatever you like to do.
Thank you. So this is from Roger Ehrlich. The Hill recently hosted a highly promoted online seminar with many ex-Pentagon and DC big shots about how the war in the Ukraine created opportunity for the arms industry sponsored by Raytheon. This lack of pretense of objectivity, along with Katie's firing and the censoring criticism of U.S.-Israel relationship, ought to open some eyes. Does this allow us to begin a more frank conversation about how the military-industrial complex is really running things, regardless of what party is in power?
Can you read the part again at the beginning about Ukraine and the Hills seminar? Or
yeah, hold on one moment. My apologies. It was a long comment.
Yeah.
So it starts with The Hill recently hosted a highly promoted online seminar with many ex-Pentagon and DC big shots about how the war in Ukraine created opportunity for the arms industry, sponsored by Raytheon. Do you want
So
me
that thing that they posted was sponsored by Raytheon, that event? Is there a link to this, by the way? Because I would love to see it.
Roger, I know you're out there. If you can post a link to this, that would be very helpful.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, all of DC. I mean, up in DC, they just had the the biggest trade conference for the arms industry. The AUSA conference was just this past week. Everything is connected. The money is awash. The banks are tied into the arms industry, which is tied into the fossil fuel industry. You know, and then I know you just had this great conversation with Douglas McGregor, who is not politically affiliated with us. You know, at all. I mean, I met Doug. I like him, but like we don't agree on much.
There's overlap, but yeah, right.
Yeah. Well, and so I urge people to go to Useful Idiots and listen to that, because it really is such a good conversation on the war in Ukraine. But, you know, one of the things he talks about early on is, and this is something that, you know, I know you've been saying, we've been saying, how dirty this war is, how this is about fossil fuels. This is about commerce. This is about the money. You know, for me, people ask me all the time, how did this shift from in debates in 2012 when Obama mocks Mitt Romney for saying Russia was an enemy or an adversary, to literally a year later? And, you know, I follow the lead of Larry Wilkerson on this, who was, you know, Colin Powell's chief of staff. And Larry's really great on all these things. You know, you go and look at the Cove Point expansion, and the Cove Point expansion, what happens in April 2013, it's $3 to $4 billion that Dominion Energy puts into their liquid natural gas facility in Eastern Virginia. The purpose is to export liquid natural gas to Europe. And you can literally see American policy on Russia turn on a dime around that time. And yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what you want to add to that. You know, I'm on my soapbox and everything, but it's really quite, and I brought up this earlier, and you said you hadn't listened to it yet, but Tulsi Gabbard, I know a lot of people want to hear about Tulsi Gabbard as well, but you haven't listened to her screed, which was really one of the most disgustingly craven things I've heard in a long time. She does get something right, though, about the danger of nuclear war, you know, and I know that's something that you talked about with McGregor as well.
And that's sad that that's so rare. Like, that should be something that lots of people get right.
Right.
It's pathetic that we don't have more of that. Where, by the way, is I'm not sure where is this Zoom chat where I could put links to stuff, or is there where are people watching this? Is there a Facebook thing?
If you leave your links to everyone, if you go down to everyone, then it'll go to everyone. But what I've been doing is, if you left a link, shared with hosts and panelists, I've shared it with everyone.
Okay, great. I just wanted to put in the Jacobin article.
Your both Useful Idiots and the Katie Halper Show.
Oh, great, thank you.
It's gone out. And, you know, this is such an important time. Like, one of the things I say to people all the time about this campaign is we need to get it out there. Matt, one thing that I'd like you to do, can you show our latest ad?
Absolutely.
Get some play. We've had some amazing talent who have volunteered their time to this campaign. It's been wonderful. So, Matt, if you could share your screen.
Right. And hang on.
Oh, I see the Q&A now. All right, now I see the Q&A. Got it.
Let's see. There we go. Share screen. A host disabled participant screen sharing. Okay, so AP, could you give me the ability to screen share, and I'll just kind of set it up with like what Rose was saying. We've got some really great folks who have been putting a lot of effort, a lot of time, a lot of skill into making a variety of videos for us. Everything from a gentleman who been part of the campaign since we started, who's been producing videos. He teaches this kind of stuff, to a father and son production team here in DC, to a guy who's an Episcopalian priest who just knocks out these great videos for us. And
That's
so
cool.
what we need the ability to air them so people can see, because if they can't see them, it doesn't really do what we need them to do. And that's the question. And I still don't have screen sharing. So that's the question that we have is like, look, there's 7.3 million registered North Carolina voters. How do we get them in front of us? Like, how do we get my name? How do we get the campaign's name? How do we get the Green Party in front of them? If they don't know who we are, they're not gonna vote for us. Like the first time you go into the ballot box and you're going to mark up the ballot and you see this dude, Matt Hoh, you're not going to vote for that guy. That's the first time you're running across them. So, we've been trying to, how do we get to people? So we go out to events, we go out to forums, we shake hands, we meet people personally. And then the idea is with these videos streaming, on YouTube, Facebook, various platforms. And I have
you should have the ability to do that.
I have the ability. Okay. I have the technology. All right. Hang on. Let's see.
Sometimes a gal got to do what she got to do.
That's right. Yeah. Hang on. It's not giving me. Let me try this again.
All right.
There we go. Okay. Hang on. Here we are. Okay. And this is our latest video. And hopefully everyone will hear this.
Unaffiliated voters outnumber Republicans and Democrats in North Carolina. People are not being represented. We are tired of the two-party system that has brought us inflation, stagnant wages, a climate crisis. I'm running for U.S. Senate to represent all the people of North Carolina. I want to help us reclaim our power, reimagine our futures, and rebuild our communities with a new vision. I'm Matt Hoh. I'm running for U.S. Senate in North Carolina, and this is my message.
And by the way, I want to give a special shout out to K. Ryan Parker, who is now an award-winning filmmaker, who's been doing so much help for this campaign. But he was the one who came up with the "Go for Hoh" slogan. And nice. I love it. And I love those buttons. So thank you, Ryan. So look, being a campaign manager on an independent campaign, an independent progressive campaign, it is a hard thing to be, because you want to do so much, and yet finances put you in the position where you can't do everything you want to do. But when I look at people putting out ads like this for us, we need to be able to raise the money to get some traction for that. There are people in North Carolina, 14% are undecided. North Carolina is a very independent state. Unaffiliated voters, there are more unaffiliated voters in North Carolina than there are Democrats or Republicans. And look at how hard they've tried to keep Matt's message, a message that resonates with people, who think that healthcare is a human right, that it should not be this diseased for-profit system that we currently have. People who believe that the Palestinian people deserve the right to be free. And I just want to say on a personal note, Katie, I come from a Jewish family myself. I have experienced estrangement from family members, but I grew up as first generation on the Jewish side of my family in this nation. And my grandparents were both Holocaust survivors who then went and colonized Palestine, and I can't put that nicer than that. And I grew up on hearing about the massacres that took place in Palestine. And this was told to me to fill me with pride. It didn't. And so it's one of the things they really want to hide is how many Jewish people now are willing to stand against this. This has nothing to do with anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
That our very histories, the ways we have been victimized as a people, should put us on the right side of history. So I so appreciate you taking this stand. And yes, we need people in the Senate, more than one person or two people who will take this stand. And so this is what they've been trying so hard to keep silent. And I'm asking people tonight to help in however you can help. As I say every week, 2,900 is the limit you can give. If you can do that, that makes a tremendous difference. If anyone here can do between 2,000 and 2,900, that is something that's going to not only keep the lights on, because yeah, I'm dealing with keeping the lights on. And this is not the moment for me to be dealing with keeping the lights on. It's the moment for me as a campaign manager to make sure that Matt's message is getting out to as many people as we possibly can. So I'm going to leave the link here. And hold on one moment.
Yeah, and one of the things I just saw in the chat, I was reminded of, is that Katie also does a call-in show where it's kind of like we've come back with the technology back to call-in radio, and I've done that a few times with you, and it's really great because you're able to. Rose and I were kind of having this conversation today, like how can we do something like this and have it so that people have real interaction with the guests, in a way, and call-in is one of those ways to do it. That's the way it works. Is just if people aren't familiar with it, there's a host, and then people are able literally just to call in on their phones, I mean, more or less, and talk to the guests and talk to the hosts, and it works very well. It's very manageable in a way that it wouldn't be so manageable here on Zoom.
I just put a link into it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. People should check that out. And I mean, again, it comes back to, for us, like, how do we use this type of technology to reach people? How do we, we've got the ability. Look, one thing that's so amazing to me is like when you do those videos, like they're shooting them on their phones. They got their tripods and everything, and they got this little phone stuck on the top of it. And it comes out looking like like you'd see on the television. I mean, so it's the ability for us to do things. And so if people can help us advance it, get word out about this campaign, introduce us to people all through North Carolina. And I know a lot of people I see in the chat have actually given in the last few days. We've been doing a fundraising push. So I see a number of you, Anthony and Scott, Anthony and Stephen, Ellie. A bunch of you folks I know have already given in the last day or two, so I appreciate it. Jackie Nabel, you gave us a big donation a little while back, so thank you.
Jackie's great. Jackie. I got to give a shout out to Jackie, not just for all she's given, but she stood out every day, like 2 hours a day, collecting signatures for months and months. And Jackie is not, I mean, she's an older woman. There's physical challenges to this. And, when we fought to make sure they were going to put the North Carolina Green Party, and by extension, Matt Hoh, on the ballot, we weren't just fighting for the Green Party, and we weren't just fighting for Matt. We were fighting for Jackie. We were fighting for Janie. We were fighting for James. We were fighting for Charlie. All these people, Sammy, Sadie, all these people who went out and just spent hours on their feet getting petitions signed. And I was not going to let their heroic work be in vain because they, were angry that we were able to do it. So if people could do, look, if there's anyone here who could do it between 1,000 and 2,000, you will make me very happy. You will. I will. I don't know exactly what I could do except offer up, like, I'll make sure Matt gets on a Zoom with you. Offering a Zoom with me, I don't think it's terribly exciting, but with Matt, but really, what we need is for people to do what they can. And I know there's a lot of people here who've already given. I know there's a lot of people here who have been so supportive of this campaign. So what I'm saying is, if you can do 100, that would be wonderful. If you can't do 100, but you could do 50, that would be, all of it helps. All of it helps. I've had people who've given $27. Why $27?
Bernie.
Because that's what they used to give to Bernie Sanders. Right. And, Bernie Sanders went very far on $27 from so many people. Now, I wish we had that reach to have millions of people giving $27. But man, if you could give $27 for Bernie Sanders, all right, and John's going to do 50. Thank you.
Wow.
And I can see on our database, I can see that some people have given who don't want to put their names in the chat.
Yeah, you don't want me to embarrass you by saying how great you are. Okay.
But one of them has been a volunteer. She does amazing stuff for us. So you live in Georgia. We know you. We love you. Thank you for the continued support.
Yes, we've had. Look, I've been dealing with left politics for over 30 years. I've said this to people before. And on this campaign, I've come across some of the most dedicated and talented volunteers I ever have in my life.
Maybe the people donating can explain, can put in the chat why they're donating, what they think is so important about this campaigin.
Hey,
we should have had Katie on months ago.
Katie,
we would have been pros. We would have been. I mean,
you have that media experience.
You'd be president by now.
I know, right? They'd be, yeah.
That's right, Stephanie. Matt represents us. So if you could do that 27, if you could do 10, I know that when I have been at my absolute brokest in life, and I've been broke. Oh, how I have. Somehow I could always manage $10. The state of my poverty wasn't going to be either a lot better or a lot worse over $10. So I feel like if you can do that, do it, please. I am, absolutely thrilled at what we've been able to do, but I want to take this as far as we can, because the more we can get these great ads out, the more people can know who Matt is and what his message is. Someone asked if we have a Venmo account. Because of FEC reporting purposes, it either has to go through check or through the donate link that I've left, and I'll leave again. There's specificity with FEC reporting that you can't do things like PayPal and Venmo.
Yeah, I mean, if people gave us a lot of money, we could hire somebody to manage that, so we could do that. But it just comes down to a people aspect thing. We don't have enough, don't have the people to handle that type of stuff, because there's a lot that goes into it. But anyway, I had told Katie we were gonna do this for an hour, so I don't want to take up. I know you're very generous with your time. Come on, talk to us about this. And I know how it can be when you're out there telling the same story over and over and over again. It can be exhausting. So I appreciate you doing that with us tonight, Katie. I appreciate everyone for being here. Katie, if you have any closing thoughts.
No, I'm just saying so Fahim just gave 100. You see that?
Yeah, Fahim. Thank you.
Also, Stephen is saying he already gave the max.
He did. Steve has.
Yep. Country need more voices and more choices. The country is stagnant under the dominance of the duopoly.
Stephen also asked earlier, and I didn't want to put you on the spot, but he asked whether or not you would run for office.
I got to think about it. I need some time.
Oh, I like that. I like that. Not a.
I don't think
That's a way better answer than we've gotten from some.
Yeah, I like that.
Like, no, never.
I like this
exactly.
too, by the way, from Anthony Donovan, who writes, "There is no stronger, clearer voice than a soldier who can tell citizens that war is the wrong direction. Some of the most courageous leaders I know are veterans for peace." Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Katie.
And Anthony is a Veterans for Peace member in New York.
Oh, got it.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
Yeah. But yeah,
you know what I should have recommended
that I've always said about Matt is that when he thought it was the right thing, he put his life on the line. For his nation. And when he understood, when it became so clear that he had put his life on the line in vain for, this quagmire, this deepening, this war state, he had the guts to publicly resign from it and to tell the truth about it and to be a true voice of peace. And isn't that something we want in our senators?
Yes.
He won a award for truth telling. Imagine having somebody in the Senate who wins awards for telling the truth, because, if they gave out awards for lying, I think a lot of our senators certainly up for that award.
Barbara Johnson just donated. Also, Fahim, this is really cool, says, "Matthew helped me counter recruit a stranger on Katie's call-in. I'm forever grateful to the two of you." Can I put in another link? This is to a book my mom wrote. It's the Amazon link, but I'll find another one. But she wrote a book called, you reminded me when you said anti-war, Vets for Peace. She wrote a book called When You Come Home, and it's about 3 generations of war. And my mom was actually writing about Gulf War syndrome and stuff before other people were admitting that it was a thing. Sorry, putting on some chapstick. My lips are very
Oh, gosh. Yeah. Talk about... Oh, well, yeah, I'd love to talk to her at some time. And I just wrote the book down. I will check that out. It's, God, I mean, that whole thing that happened with Gulf War syndrome, very similar to what happened with Agent Orange and so many other things where they just denied it. They lied, they delayed, they denied, hoped they died. That type of mantra was what and you see that with so many other things in our society. But my God, but you see what you started up there though, Katie for POTUS, Matt for VP. Oh,
nice.
Which we had 2024, and then what was the one? Harper Hoh in 24.
Harper Hoh, nice.
Yeah. So I don't know, but that's I don't know. My response to that is much.
Well, I need a veteran. I don't have a military experience, so I'll need you for that to give me.
It's
to get the veteran vote.
It's overrated. Trust me, it's overrated. I'll take you. We'll go someplace. I'll shoot a bunch of rounds over your head, and maybe you could take part in like some type of atrocity, and then you've got your credentials. So that's what that means to me. So you're right.
I think you just shot a campaign
Matt's
ad
very
there.
modest.
Yeah,
but Matt's given up a lot, and I'm always so proud to be part of this campaign.
How many people are watching? Because I'm seeing that we're less than 150 away from 22K.
I don't know how many. I mean, we could see what's here, but we have folks on YouTube and Facebook. I'm not sure how many.
If everyone watching just gives $5, it's like what you pay for a month of my Patreon.
Katie, I'm giving all fundraising duties to you. I have bad news for you.
It's funny. It's much easier for me to do it for other people. Oh my God! Look, John's giving $50. He doesn't care.
There you go.
$100 away.
Another $100
on
22K.
And I do see that Jane Kramer, Jane. I don't know if you've been with us before, but welcome. You asked where do I stand on abortion, and I am for. I believe abortion is healthcare. I believe as in all healthcare, it should be available to all without cost, without condition, without judgment. So I support, abortion in the sense that there should be no restrictions on abortion. That's where I stand on abortion. But welcome if this is the first time you're joining us. And if you want more information, you can find that on our website. We have a whole section on abortion, reproductive rights, women's health care, et cetera, on our website as well.
She
So-
also asked
Tammy,
what
I
makes you a
just
better
gave 100,
candidate.
so I think we
Oh.
got that 150.
Wow, it's
But
amazing.
Wow, huh?
stop people from giving more.
And I
Wow.
can't believe,
Because
I
it's
mean,
more.
Naima just gave, right? Naima?
Naima, yes. Thank you,
thank you.
Naima.
Wow. Also wanted to quickly, Jane also asked what makes you a better
Roger, thank you.
candidate than Beasley or Bud?
What makes me a better candidate being Beasley or Bud? Well, I mean, gosh, how much time do we have,
How
right?
much time do we have?
Yeah, I mean, but
Yeah.
no, I think it's the
Thanks, Roger. Thanks, Naima. Sorry,
yeah, this is fantastic. It's who I want to represent, and it's what drives me to do this. Right? It's the fact that I'm doing this not because I have aspirations or it's because of people I love. Because there's an anger I have for whether there's been no accountability for the wars, whether it's because there's been no accountability for the economic ruin that's been visited upon tens of millions of people in this country and across the world to benefit Wall Street, to benefit corporations. I mean, those are deliberate financialization policies that have ruined tens and tens of millions of people. There's never been any accountability for that. There's been no accountability for inaction on the climate. I mean, let alone then the people personally I have in my life who are, people have heard me say this before, but it's true because it keeps showing up in my life. People who are checking their bank account to see whether they can go to their doctors. I mean, I keep having that happen. People telling this, people I love. I had to stop myself the other day, Katie, because I mentioned the kids on my street. And I was like, wait, they don't live here anymore because corporations bought their fucking homes and they had to move. I mean, so it's like that type of stuff. It's the anger. And I know Rose is, doesn't always like it when I get so angry, but this is kind of where I am.
Righteous anger. That's what
right.
People,
But
one of the things
that's
that people really
Yeah.
liked about Bernie Sanders is because it really
Exactly.
speaks to people's sense of justice or injustice.
Yeah, and there has been deliberate beneficiaries. Roger, who just donated, and Roger, who is also a member of
Roger,
Veterans for
thank
Peace,
you.
and just such an important person in my life, actually. But Roger, who, what he brought up about the military-industrial complex. I mean, have been clear beneficiaries to our wars. There's been clear beneficiaries to however many hundreds of thousands came home from Iraq and Saudi Arabia and Kuwait in 1991 and developed Gulf War syndrome, and then were gaslighted, were lied to, were denied, and just tried to be kept down and quiet until they died, rather than be taken care of. Meanwhile, as we all know, that war, like the subsequent wars, the wars before it, also very dirty. I mean, so the anger there, seeing as how people have profited, people have gained. And so I think that's what makes me different than Sherry Beasley and Ted Budd. I would not ever do the right thing for the corporations or the banks or the wealthy. I would not go along to get along. If I did, I would have been with the Democratic Party. I could have had a very clear path with them. I've worked with them. I've been on a 501c4 as a board of directors for a 501c4 for 5 years. I mean, I had that experience, and I know plenty of people in Congress and everything else. And I'm not doing that. I'm not going to see other people get hurt so a few can gain. And it is that righteous anger that people say, I shouldn't say this, but I'm not going to say it. But what I would like to see happen, right, is the some degree of justice, right, some degree of restoration, and then of course, the way that these policies for decades have benefited the few, apply that to the many, so that the working families of those of us, the 60% of us who are living paycheck to paycheck, have a chance, the same chance that has been given by both the Democrats and Republicans for decades now, and have seen, record corporate profits, a monopolization of all types of industries, right? The banks is getting larger, the billionaires, they become 100 billionaires. I mean, you can't even keep track of what these guys are worth anymore. I mean, just give the same opportunities to working families that we've given to all those, to the banks, the corporations, the wealthy. So, I mean, you got me going here. I apologize for, getting a little angry, but, but that's what it is. That's what sets me apart.
You're making it sound like I'm polite, Matt. What did I become most famous for?
We actually had a moment, Katie, a few weeks ago. We triggered Matt Walsh and Ben Shapiro, which is a very satisfying thing to do, because we were at a festival.
Kind of a personal high point for me.
Yeah, we were at a festival, and this guy came up, and he was drunk, and he was in my face and being a dick, and he basically says, he's coming at me with the "what is a woman," right? And then he starts talking about my mom and everything else, and all kinds of things. And before I can even say anything, Rose says to him, "Fuck off, transphobe," and then he walks away. And so I tweeted about this experience. I said I had my first "what is a woman" question, and my campaign manager responded just with "fuck off, transphobe," and I felt that there was no need to say anything further.
And fascists everywhere.
They descended.
Came after me.
Brigade.
Oh, really? Wow.
Look, I have fascists who are my enemy.
Yeah,
well,
but it got Ben Shapiro very upset, and Matt Walsh very upset.
I guess I'm doing something right.
Yeah.
It was a little nerve-wracking. I'm not going to say that. And then they kept for about a week. They kept coming over to to our Facebook page, Twitter, with "what is a woman? What is a woman?" I answered one of them with the segment of the population who has nothing to do with you.
That's funny. That's good. Yeah.
It's like, okay, I'm answering one. There, I've defined it for you. Now go away. But anyways, I brought that up just to say that you shouldn't worry about me thinking you're not being polite enough, Matt. And there's so much to be angry over. It's a matter of what do we do with our anger?
Right.
Are we just going to use it in self-destructive ways, or are we going to build something? And I think we're building something here, and it's going to go beyond this campaign. I can tell you that. And thank you all so much. Katie, thank you. You've been great.
Thank you.
Look, why don't you just get Katie to do these with you every week? Because she's really good with fundraising. But Katie will be busy putting together the Left View, which I can promise you I will be watching.
Yes. Thank you.
I'm looking forward to it.
Thanks so much for having me on, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Katie, and thank you for everything you continue to do, for all your work. I think no one was surprised by what happened. I mean, I think people are surprised by you being fired and the censorship and everything, by how overt it was, like how brazen it was. But I don't think anyone was really surprised that it was you who was getting fired, because you are so willing to speak, forthfully, truthfully, forthrightly, et cetera. So thank you for that, and not just for that incident, but for, all the work you're doing. So thank you so much. And thank you for being on here with us tonight. And thank you everyone who's supporting us. I really appreciate it. I'm so grateful. We would not be here if not for all the people who have brought us to this point. We have about 3.5 weeks left of the campaign to go. And as we've said, like, November 8th is the election, but really this is about what comes after the election, about building something that has a foundation beneath it, of making sure we're getting people experience, making sure we're growing infrastructure, all those things that are necessary for independent left movement to fill a void that is there. Right. I mean, so this is the importance of this campaign right now. It's not about what our numbers are going to be on the morning of November 9th. It's about the number of people that we've had part of this campaign, who we've gotten experience, who've helped us build this thing. And then on November 9th, it's what comes next, for those people, for this movement, for this party, and not about, hey, what were our numbers last night? So I appreciate everything everyone's done, has gotten us here, everything everyone's going to do to continue to move forward. And thank you.
I'd love to get enough numbers to really irritate certain people.
Thanks, guys, so much.
Thank you so much, everybody. You have a great night. This will be available on YouTube probably by tomorrow.
And by the way, my middle name is Rose, small world.
Yeah,
there you go.
And a lovely middle name it is.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, everyone. Good
night. All right, thank you.
Much, y'all.
Thanks.
Have a great evening.
Bye.
Bye-bye.